Don't let anybody make you think that God chose America as his divine messianic force to be a sort of policeman of the whole world. God has a way of standing before the nations with judgment, and it seems that I can hear God saying to America, "You're too arrogant. And if you don't change your ways, I will rise up and break the backbone of your power."
Otep, this is Femi here with Freedom Now, and your ears are in tuned at high frequencies in a liberated zone. Freedom Now is a Pan-Africanist, global news outlet from coast to coast, dispelling the Western propaganda media and their all lies point of views. Freedom Now is devoted to relay true news, views, and proper clues to form solutions around freedom for the oppressed worldwide. Now, get relaxed, grab a pen, and phone a friend, because Freedom Now is set to begin to awaken deep sleepers dreaming about freedom now. Within in Freedom Now.
Straight off the edge to the bottom where we from. America, bloodshed thy taste indeed. You crown your days by splitting this from sea to shining sea. Land of the free, home of the brave, graves of the slaves at the foundations where Wall Street was laid when the first stones was paved, first notes engraved. NYC to be more seashores teemed with slaves. The hang nooses at the Capitol, set truces between red and blue, just the savage, you gangbanging or what have you. Democrats are hypocrites, are just animals, don't give.
Habari Gani. This is Sister Thage with Freedom Now's agenda for this Saturday, October 5th, 2024. We honor all who have been martyred and stand with all the people power in resistance to imperialist wars, capitalism, colonialism, and white supremacy. All power to the people, power to the youth. Remember to join an organization, and if you're not already part of one, start one. We are back in fund drive here on Freedom Now to keep our KPFK programming and our lights on in the building. And so we commence today's program with the African Drumbeat Historical Calendar. In this hour, we also have a statement from Black Lives Matter Los Angeles on Mayor Karen Bass's appointment of Jim McDonnell as the new Los Angeles Police Department Chief, and we will hear prison radio commentaries from Mumia Abu-Jamal on the Uhuru 3 and Julian Assange. Today, prolific author, radical historian, professor of African American Studies at the University of Houston, and Freedom Now co-producer, Dr. Gerald Horne interviews Gregory Downs, the department chair and professor of history at UC Davis, and author of the book Nat Turner, Black Prophet, A Visionary History. Our music clip mix includes MLK, Zap Mama, Slum Prophecy, Chick Corea, John Coltrane, Freddie Hubbard, Cal Jader, and more. And now, Dr. Horne's going to fill you in on our Fund Drive premium for this hour. And so sit back, phone in to call to make your pledge, and as always, we stand ready for revolution.
Pledge a mere $100 and receive as a thank you gift the latest book from Gerald Horne, hot off the presses, Armed Struggle, with a question mark, Panthers and Communists, Black Nationalists and Liberals in Southern California through the 60s and 70s. Read about the distinctions drawn between and amongst armed propaganda, armed self-defense, and armed struggle. Read the first detailed analysis of the shootout at the UCLA campus in January 1969, leaving 2 Panthers dead. Read the first detailed analysis of the LAPD attack on Panther headquarters in December 1969. Read the first detailed analysis of the August 1970 shootout at the Marin County Courthouse, featuring Pasadena teenager Jonathan Jackson in an alleged attempt to free his elder brother George Jackson and read of the role of the recently deceased political prisoner Ruchell Magee. Read the first detailed analysis of the attempt at UCLA to fire Professor Angela Davis because of her membership in the U.S. Communist Party and her subsequent trial when she was charged with murder, conspiracy, and kidnapping during the aforementioned county courthouse shootout. Read the first detailed analysis of the Panthers' embassy abroad in Algeria, led by Eldridge Cleaver of Pasadena and Watts, and their attempt to build global solidarity for the Black liberation struggle. Read of the Panthers' solidarity delegations to the nation then known as the People's Republic of the Congo in Brazzaville, and of the Panthers' exile in socialist Cuba. Read of the connections between Hollywood communists and progressives, such as screenwriter Dalton Trumbo, actor Jane Fonda, actor Gene Seberg, screenwriter Donald Freed, basketball star Bill Walton, and producer Bert Schneider, and their support for the Panthers. Read of the severe repression visited upon radical and left-wing forces, which set the stage for the rise of paramilitary forces, often depicted as gangs, and the concomitant rise of the drug epidemic, especially crack cocaine. Read the first detailed analysis of the NAACP chapter in LA, especially the Beverly Hills Hollywood branch, which was a cash cow for the national organization, not least because of the contributions from celebrities like Sammy Davis Jr. Read of the roots of Kwanzaa, the nationally celebrated Black American holiday. Above all, understand why historically Southern California has been in the vanguard of radicalism and revolutionary upsurges, and how that spirit has yet to be squashed. Again, pledge a mere $100 and receive a signed copy of the latest book by Gerald Horne, Armed Struggle, with a question mark, Panthers and Communists, Black Nationalists and Liberals in Southern California through the 60s and 70s.
And you can pledge online at kpfk.org or call 818-985-KPFK. That's 818-985-5735. And you will receive this book as a thank you gift with your donation of $100 to the station.
Hotep. This is Sister Luyanda Koboka with this October 3rd weekly African drumbeat historical calendar of critical events and leaders which we acknowledge by giving publicity to their contributions so that we may gain inspiration to continue on the battle of human and spiritual values over greed and exploitation. October 3rd, 1952. The Mau Mau Revolution against British colonialism begins in Kenya. Mau Mau, or the Kikuyu forest fighters, fought against the British efforts to make Kenya a white settler colonial like South Africa. The Mau Mau, headed by Didon Kamati, strategically targeted African colonial collaborators as their primary target, realizing that without collaborators, England could not sustain domination against the masses of Africans. October 3rd, 1904. The people of Namibia, Southwest Africa, begin armed struggle against German colonial occupation after the Heru genocidal massacre and the first Holocaust of the 20th century. October 5th, 1945. The 5th Pan-African Congress occurred in Manchester, England. This Congress gave a mass working class character to the Pan-African movement, as well as having in attendance Jomo Kenyatta, George Padmore, Kwame Nkrumah, C.L.R. James, and Amy Garvey, the wife of Marcus Garvey. This Congress called for the organization of mass political parties. It was anti-capitalistic in nature and was the final confrontation with colonialism. October 6, 1917. Fannie Lou Hamer, the powerful civil rights activist from the sharecropper background, was born. She exposed the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party at the 1964 Democratic Convention in Atlantic City, when the Democrats refused to acknowledge and seat the majority of citizens of Mississippi who were Africans. October 7, 1897. Elijah Muhammad, the leader of the Nation of Islam, was born. The Nation of Islam, the largest Islamic activist organization in the United States, under the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, many convicts and gang members were transformed into contributing members of the African community. October 8, 1804, Haiti becomes an independent nation after decades of brutal colonialism under the French. October 8, 1967, the U.S. CIA and its local puppets murder Che Guevara in Bolivia. Che, the co-architect of the Cuban Revolution and an internationalist who fought in the Congo and throughout South America against Western colonial and neo-colonial domination of humanity. October 9th, 1980. Sister Ida Jimmy, the militant freedom fighter of Namibia, was imprisoned by the racist South African government, which refused the people of Namibia self-determination. October 9th, 1823. Mary Ann Shard Carey, an African organizing in the U.S. and Canada, was a champion to fugitive slaves. She was the leader of the Black immigration movement. She was also the first Black woman to establish a newspaper in North America. This is Freedom Now, 90.7 FM in Southern California and 98.7 FM in Central California. Please check out our website at kpfk.org. Under Programs, then click on Freedom Now. As in our tradition to build unity, we request that you join us by chanting Amandla Awetu 3 times. This Azanian rally cry means the power is ours, so join us wherever you are. Amandla Awetu, Amandla Awetu, Amandla Awetu.
And we are back. This is Sister Thage with Freedom Now. And Black Lives Matter Los Angeles has just released a statement on Mayor Karen Bass's appointment of Jim McDonnell as the new Los Angeles Police Department chief. And so here it goes. The appointment of Jim McDonnell as LAPD Chief of Police is an absolute betrayal of the people and a stark contradiction to the progressive values Mayor Karen Bass claims to uphold. Of the list of finalists, McDonnell is by far the most problematic, with a long history of anti-Black and anti-immigrant policies, which led to him being voted out as Los Angeles County Sheriff in 2016. Under his watch, the Los Angeles Sheriff's deputy gangs expanded, terrorizing and killing community members, including Niani Finlayson, John Horton, and Anthony Vargas. McDonnell's legacy also includes the inhumane and tortuous conditions inside Men's Central Jail. Conditions so appalling that public outcry forced the County Board of Supervisors to agree to close the jail. As sheriff, he collaborated with federal immigration authorities to carry out massive deportation sweeps, including targeting undocumented youth. When he ran for sheriff in 2012, he was attempting to escape a disgraceful and scandal-ridden record as Long Beach Police Chief. Since being ousted, McDonnell has peddled himself in the private sector, profiting personally from the over-policing industry. We can only surmise that Mayor Bass appointed McDonnell as a political play to appeal to conservatives and to stave off attacks from the Los Angeles Police Protective League. It is also in line with the mayor's massive giveaways to police, which now has a budget that exceeds any LAPD budget in history. As a 29-year veteran of the department, Chief McDonnell threatens to continue LAPD's violence and corruption, which is literally bankrupting the city. He is also sure to advance the mayor's agenda of criminalizing protest and quashing of free speech. Black Lives Matter Los Angeles is both dismayed and outraged by the mayor's choice. We will continue our work to uphold police accountable and challenge elected officials who prioritize their own political ambitions ahead of community interests. And that is the statement by Black Lives Matter Los Angeles on Mayor Karen Bass's appointment of Jim McDonnell as the new Los Angeles Police Department chief. And now we go to our prison radio commentaries with Mumia Abu Jamal.
Partial victory for Uhuru. The proposed political framework of leaders and supporters of the African People's Socialist Party, perhaps best known as the Uhuru Movement in St. Petersburg, Florida, has ended with a federal jury rejecting the government's biggest charge. Several members and supporters were charged as operators in support of a foreign government, that government being Russia. With the jury's rejection of that main charge, the government's threat of over 10 years in prison also faded away. Party leader Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Penny Hess, and Jesse Neville argued that their political opinions were protected speech under the First Amendment to the Constitution, covering freedom of speech. Former APSC member Augustus Romaine Jr. also faced charges. The Uhuru defendants were convicted of conspiracy, but one wonders, conspiring to do what? If they weren't agents of a foreign power, and the jury has so found, of what could they have conspired? To oppose the U.S. empire's wars abroad? Hardly a crime. For now, Uhuru won a significant, if partial, victory for freedom of speech and the alleged right of freedom of association. If the Constitution really meant anything, the Uhuru Three would never have been charged in the first place. So we say, free the Uhuru Three, because Uhuru just means freedom, with love, not fear. This is Mumia Abu Jamal.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
Julian Assange finally goes home. For Julian Assange of the online news agency known as WikiLeaks, he had to wonder if this day would ever come. For he faced not only the enmity of governments, including, of course, the U.S. government, but of much of the media, for he scooped most of them with ease. His work there unveiled the true face of imperial war, especially regarding the Iraq War, where Americans killed civilians with impunity. That made him an enemy of the state, but it didn't unmake him as a journalist. In fact, many of the same media that attacked him saw no problem with using his scoops and reports. He spent years in detention in a foreign embassy and later in British custody. Most of his staunchest supporters never wavered. And finally, he made his way home. With love, not fear. This is Mumia Abu Jamal.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
On Beneath the Mountain. Dear readers, I've written many books on a variety of subjects, on jailhouse lawyers, on history, on black liberation, and other topics. As a general rule, I don't write about my books, for in a way, the books speak for themselves. However, today, I make an exception. Today, I write to introduce a work edited by me and my co-editor, Dr. Jennifer Black, an African American literature scholar. We pulled together works from the annals of popular resistance history, from slave revolts to prison revolts, from women's struggles to Native American struggles, from workers, radicals, and revolutionaries. This new compilation is called Beneath the Mountain, because that's where we found these freedom fighters and resistance fighters, beneath the mountain of repression. And it has been virtually flying off the shelves. There are great names here, like Nat Turner, the great slave leader, to John Brown, the abolitionist, from First Nations people like Crazy Horse to Geronimo. Over 30 people are featured here in this work. I hope you enjoy it, if only half as much as we enjoyed bringing it straight to you. With love, not fear, this is Mumia Abu Jamal.
These commentaries are recorded by Prison Radio.
For KPFK Los Angeles, this is Gerald Horne, and with me on the line is Gregory Downs, Department Chair and Professor of History at the University of California at Davis, and co-author of the book Nat Turner, Black Prophet, A Visionary History. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Now, KPFK Los Angeles, Gregory Downs.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be with such a distinguished historian.
Ditto. So, who was Nat Turner, and why did you co-write a book about him?
Yeah. Let me split that question into two parts. And first, and the most important, is who is this man, and what do we know about him? On the one hand, we know quite a bit about Nat. We know, that he was born in 1800. We know that he lived his life in Southampton County, in the outskirts of what then was called Jerusalem, but now has a new name, of Cortland. And we know a fair amount about the white family that over generations had moved from the Tidewater and into that region, and in the process had brought a number of enslaved people, including at some point, though some of the details of this get a little hard to pin down, Nat's grandmother and his mother, and we know less about his father, though we have some interesting references. We know that this was a region that was really transformed by the spread of a Methodist revival. And we have strong reason to believe that when Nat was quoted as talking about his experiences in that revival, that those things are plausibly true. He is quoted as describing, we can talk about, why I'm being careful in saying that, his experiences as a child in prayer meetings and church meetings. And these things track with what we know both about the White Turner family and their sponsorship of a Methodist church in the region, about some of the ways that Methodism was transformed. We have good reason to think that people saw him as unusual from an early age. Certainly this is in that neighborhood, something that comes up, we'll talk later about sources among many people. reflect that. And then we have a strong reason to believe that his mother and grandmother perceived that it was possible his gifts could mean that he individually would be manumitted from slavery. Not a widespread emancipation or abolition, but a specific manumission of a selected person. It becomes clear from the record that in his late teens, early 20s, that instead he is passed several times among family members as there are deaths and other events that could have led to moments of emancipation. And that by 1831, that he is being legally the property of a child of the extended family and under the control of a man who had married into it. And then we also know that in October 1831, that a group of people, of whom everyone says Nat is the leader, launch one of the two largest rebellions in U.S. history by enslaved people, along with one in Louisiana called the German Coast Rebellion. And we know that in this march, they attack a number of families connected with either the White Turner family or families that had married into it, other Methodist families, especially the Francises, that had married into the Turner family, and that they are marching on the road that would lead them toward the county seat, which is propitiously named Jerusalem. And we have fairly seemingly accurate readings of the number of people, houses they attack, and people who are killed in those attacks. And then we have a number of records that describe a pitched battle between white militia or posse that gathered to launch an attack, and then counterattacks by the band that included Nat. And then we know that a number of people associated with Nat's legion, we might say, are arrested and tortured, and we have things that we say that are claimed that they said under those circumstances, which raise real problems. And we know it takes 2 months before Nat himself is captured, and this is a sign of great worry to people, to white people, and inspiration surely to Black Virginians and others. And that 2 months later, he is captured, not very far at all from where he had launched the rebellion. And we know that he is tried and sentenced and hung. We also know that he met with a local white attorney who was not his attorney, and that attorney then would publish this extraordinary document that purports to be his confessions, and we can talk about that. And then there's lots of things that we wish we knew, right? We have a good sense that many people are saying, white and black, that Nat was talking about visions that we'll discuss, and that many people, white and black, are interested in him as a particular religious prophet, which is what Gray quotes him as saying, that he's a prophet like those from the Hebrew Bible. But we have to rely on that source to get to some of the details. And then we know that there's also many people who say that in the aftermath, there is a wide campaign of terror across Southside Virginia and spreading more widely, as white posses and militia and just random people go out and indiscriminately murder black people, whether involved in the events or not. But we have very varying sets of information on how many people under what circumstances. And we also have rumors that Nat's uprising, his rebellion, is part of a much larger rebellion that was planned across the region. But here, too, we run into the sort of fascinating source problems that you work with as a historian and I and all of us work with, of traces and extraordinary hints, but difficulty in pinning down exactly how confident we should be of how widespread the knowledge of the rebellion was. So that's, we know there was, one of the great rebellions of enslaved people in U.S. history. We know there was an extraordinary person at the center of it. And we know some things about his life in slavery. And then there's a lot more that we can make educated judgments on, but not certainties. I came to this, I'm more a scholar of a little later, the period of the coming of the Civil War, the emancipation during wartime and Reconstruction, and the potential for revolutionary change after. But a close friend of mine, Anthony Kay, who was a scholar of slavery, had been working on this coming out of his earlier work on how enslaved people understood their geography, how they worked and operated across space, and who they perceived as potential allies and who they were wary of, and how geography shaped that. He got into the Nat movement. Over time, he got fascinated by the religious aspects of it and the ways that Nat as a specific kind of prophet was something scholars struggled to capture. And he also was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. And so in 2016, he asked me if I would be prepared to take the book up if he died. I agreed. I met with him, repeatedly over the next year, always in hopes that I would disappear back into the background as he recovered, but he did not. And he died in 2017. And it took me several years of going through his voluminous notes and drafts and trying to rework them into a book that captured at least one slice of what Tony was aiming to do with this.
Now, with regard to this Nat Turner revolt of the enslaved in Virginia in 1831, was there a gendered component to the story?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, all of human experiences are shaped by gendered expectations. And there's a scholar who I'm sure you know, Vanessa Holden, who has written about gender and childhood through the lens of the revolt, and done an excellent job of capturing the distinct ways that enslaved women responded to the revolt and captured both people who seemed to be actively, at least one woman who seems to be actively participating as a soldier, other women who are clearly embracing the idea of, what we might call logistics, of providing food and other vital materials to the armed band of mostly men. And other women who are skeptical or opposed to it, as well as capturing the experience in an unusual way of children, which very few scholars have done with that kind of acuity. So that's a great source for there. It's clear, for those aspects. It's clear to me, that visions of a kind of martial manhood, some of which echo through biblical prophecy of the ways that, men go from prophets to generals, or soldiers to generals, do seem a piece of it. And Nat's initial band appears by broad, agreement to have been, as he's quoted later as saying, a group of not only men, but enslaved men, most of whom had known him for quite a while. And some of them quote him as expressing concern about letting news get out too far. And so, and so very clearly, sort of masculinity and the idea of martial manhood are also a piece of it, even as very clearly, like every effort at war, it depends upon and also provokes, conflicting responses upon women and children in the surrounding area.
And before we continue with the latter part of our interview, we are in a fund drive, and so we're going to take a station break. Dr. Horne is going to tell us what you can get as a premium this hour with your donation to the station. Take it away, Dr. Horne.
Pledge a mere $100 and receive as a thank you gift the latest book from Gerald Horne, hot off the presses, Armed Struggle, with a question mark. Panthers and Communists, Black Nationalists and Liberals in Southern California through the 60s and 70s. Read about the distinctions drawn between and amongst armed propaganda, armed self-defense, and armed struggle. Read the first detailed analysis of the shootout at the UCLA campus in January 1969, leaving 2 Panthers dead. Read the first detailed analysis of the LAPD attack on Panther headquarters in December 1969. Read the first detailed analysis of the August 1970 shootout at the Marin County Courthouse, featuring Pasadena teenager Jonathan Jackson in an alleged attempt to free his elder brother, George Jackson, and read of the role of the recently deceased political prisoner, Ruchell Magee. Read the first detailed analysis of the attempt at UCLA to fire Professor Angela Davis because of her membership in the U.S. Communist Party and her subsequent trial when she was charged with murder, conspiracy, and kidnapping during the aforementioned county courthouse shootout. Read the first detailed analysis of the Panthers' embassy abroad in Algeria, led by Eldridge Cleaver of Pasadena and Watts, in their attempt to build global solidarity for the Black liberation struggle. Read of the Panthers' solidarity delegations to the nation then known as the People's Republic of the Congo in Brazzaville, and of the Panthers' exile in socialist Cuba. Read of the connections between Hollywood communists and progressives, such as screenwriter Dalton Trumbo, actor Jane Fonda, actor Gene Seberg, screenwriter Donald Freed, basketball star Bill Walton, and producer Bert Schneider, and their support for the Panthers. Read of the severe repression visited upon radical and left-wing forces, which set the stage for the rise of paramilitary forces, often depicted as gangs, and the concomitant rise of the drug epidemic, especially crack cocaine. Read the first detailed analysis of the NAACP chapter in LA, especially the Beverly Hills Hollywood branch, which was a cash cow for the national organization, not least because of the contributions from celebrities like Sammy Davis Jr. Read of the roots of Kwanzaa, the nationally celebrated Black American holiday. Above all, understand why historically Southern California has been in the vanguard of radicalism and revolutionary upsurges, and how that spirit has yet to be squashed. Again, pledge a mere $100 and receive a signed copy of the latest book by Gerald Horne, Armed Struggle, with a question mark, Panthers and Communists, Black Nationalists and Liberals in Southern California through the 60s and 70s.
And you can pledge online at kpfk.org or call 818-985-KPFK. That's 818-985-5735. And you will receive this book as a thank you gift with your donation of $100 to the station. And now we return to our interview with Gregory Downs, the department chair and professor of history at UC Davis, here to discuss his book, Nat Turner, Black Prophet, A Visionary History.
Now, what about echoes of Haiti in the revolt led by Nat Turner, either in terms of the reaction to this uprising, or perhaps in terms of some of the enslaved brought to that part of Virginia post-1804 after the triumph of the Haitian Revolution?
Yeah. This, as you know, is a question of great interest to at least some historians, and I hope and think more, because we do know, as I don't need to tell you, that Haiti circulates as a model among free people of color in the North that enslaved people, upon being recorded upon their flight to the or escape north, talk about Haiti, and that there are these glimmers of knowledge, not just that Haiti happened, but of detailed knowledge of Haiti among enslaved populations. And we see moments that we can really see that, windows into a question of what did enslaved people know about Haiti, an answer that says in some places an extraordinary amount, not just that it's an inspiration, but a real model and guide. And this had been true in the region around, in Virginia more broadly, and even in the region around Southampton County, where Nat lives his life. That, as you know, there is much, sort of wrestling with evidence that a rebellion in Richmond in 1800 is directly inspired by Haiti. Discussions of, broad, understanding of this among both free, black, and enslaved people who participate, as well as moments, these flash moments around Southampton County where a letter is found that seems to suggest a planned insurrection that might be rebellion that might be like Haiti. Counterattacks upon, or attacks upon, I should say, upon enslaved people that seem motivated by white people's fear that there's about to be, in their phrase, another Haiti, as well as echoes among this in the Denmark-Vesey Rebellion, as Nat is entering young adulthood, which has confluences with Methodism and its revival there. And then there are some specific pieces of evidence related to the revolt. One of the planned days, Nat names different potential starting dates and delays, and this has been a thing that has long sort of, or at least it was fascinating to Tony, and that I tried to capture. How do we explain those delays? But one of the days that he considers as a date closely connected to Haiti, an important anniversary. We can't say for certain that that's why he picked it. And certainly he seems highly attuned to, anchoring a rebellion in a way that, gives him, on a Sunday night into Monday morning. Many of the days he floats with are that, possibly because he expects not to have to fight on the next Sunday and has given himself maximum time. But it's certainly, fascinating. To wonder about that detailed knowledge, as well as to wonder about his detailed knowledge of the ways that military campaigns had proceeded in Haiti. As it is also sort of fascinating to wonder how much he knew about the military history of rebellions in Jamaica, which have been brilliantly excavated by a number of historians, including Vince Brown. And other rebellions, not just as a general sense this is possible, which I think all enslaved people knew, whether they knew details or not, but a detailed sense of how this was possible. What were the mechanisms that turned an inspired revolt into a successful one? What we also have glimmers of are two events that we might well consider as part of this history of enslaved people's rebellions. And these reach directly into the area around Nat's own residence. And those are the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812, that in both cases enslaved people in Tidewater, Virginia, and in the Revolution, certainly in Southside Virginia, the next region just beyond that, where Nat is from, participated directly in fighting against Virginia's slaveholders and for the British Army. Because of those circumstances, we don't always think of that as a form of enslaved people's rebellion, though it tracks with other ways in which we can understand enslaved people's rebellion as seeking allies they can utilize to defeat their proximate enemies. And we do have evidence that upon hearing rumors of something happening in the area around Nat's neighborhood, that enslaved people elsewhere in the county and region say, the British are here. In essence, that they have this memory of enslaved military rebellion in service of overthrowing a local planter elite. whether with the assistance of an outside force or, in Nat's view, with the assistance of heaven. So we have these extraordinary glimmers, and we certainly have signs of a resilient, enduring view that rebellion is possible. And also, as in other things, it would be amazing to get richer sources on exactly the mechanisms by which knowledge of Haiti had been reproduced and what specifically about the military side of it had been reproduced among enslaved people. White people undoubtedly refer to it as another Haiti, as a way of justifying, in their view, their brutal counterattack. And so that manifests immediately and can be read as a window into how they're understanding the motivations of the enslaved people around them.
Now, as you suggested a few moments ago, a good deal of what we know about this slave revolt in Virginia in 1831 comes from an account taken down by a Euro-American, Thomas Gray, who then peddles it. How do you surmount the real or imagined biases of his account?
Now, this is a crucial question. I mean, in some ways, as you well know, it's the crucial question historians always face, because it's not that we're contrasting imperfect sources in one area with perfect sources in another. And this is a thing that a number of historians raised when there was wrestling in the 70s with some of the sources that had been taken down, of interviews taken down with formerly enslaved people in the 1930s. As there was some scholarly backlash against using those. That a number of historians, pointed out that they were being held to a standard of perfection that we don't hold any other source, diplomatic source or a political source. So we're always having to ask, as you well know, where did this come from? How did this, survive? And also, those questions are always heightened in situations of dramatic power imbalance, and even more heightened in questions around slavery, because of the extreme difficulty in preserving sources that are directly, from the pen of enslaved people. Not impossibility, as you well know, and extraordinary ones do survive. But of large pockets of the southern states where, we do get only these even more flawed sources than all sources are. And then we layer another problem on top of it, which is it's actually not that easy to say with certainty all that much about a wide number of white people in Southampton County. That there are many, white people who, emerge or are named at the fringes, either as people who were attacked in the revolt, of whom we have only very sketchy knowledge. So there's also a class component on top of it, that it's not just that we have sources from from white people, but we have sources from specific classes of white people. So we layer all that up, and as you know, our job as historians is to face that and also figure out how and when to keep going. Thomas Gray clearly is hugely self-interested. He shows up to interview Nat at a period where his finances are collapsing, where his family's finances are collapsing, including the vast slaveholding of his father. And where his own prospects in life seem, extremely marginal. He's taking on some cases appointed by the county for other enslaved rebels, and he's also taking on, and then he's also looking to utilize the Nat case, which he's not assigned to, as a way to write a book that'll make money. Presumably, he sees the journalists who flood into town, hears about this, and thinks it'll make him a lot of money. Whether it does or not, we can't say for certain, though he declares bankruptcy not all that much later. So either he made it and spent it, which is quite possible, or that in that world of copyright, it quickly got reproduced in ways that even he didn't profit much from. We don't know. But certainly he's got a number of biases that we have to wrestle with. One of which is, the inherent biases of, people from a slaveholding class, of the testimony of the language and words of enslaved people. Another is that he is himself atheistic and deeply believes not only that he fears certain types of enslaved people's rebellion, but religiously inspired ones, and that he seeks a crackdown on the power of ministers, and also is suspicious of the amount of biracial meetings that there are in evangelical churches, even if they happen in very hierarchical ways. And we have a strong sense that he is weary of the idea that there is a general crisis of slavery. So these things can help us to understand how he produces a document where the parts of it that clearly are from him, some parts are sort of identified, as Chris Tomlin's, painstakingly, noted as being from his voice. And that those parts are really about saying the ways that this is a crisis caused by an unusual person motivated by religious fanaticism, and the ways to respond to that are to take it seriously but not overgeneralize. And in his other writings, he's clearly part of a group of elites, a lot of whom are lawyers, who say, if we crack down on priests, if we crack down on this inherently destabilizing religious aspects, if we crack down on free people of color, even though they're not central to the rebellion, although a few do participate, and if we crack down on literacy, we can restore a stability to slavery. That's as against other groups of white Virginians who respond saying, we need to consider the destruction of eliminating, shipping out all enslaved people to the Deep South, or other white Virginians who say we need a more active, direct military intervention everywhere. So that's these particular lenses by which we get this extraordinary document. And for that, we've got to be deeply suspicious. And yet we also have other things that do overlap. We have not just this vision. We have only the Confessions gives the details about Nat's visions. But almost everyone who is quoted in the area talks about his visions. Sometimes just a trailing mention. Sometimes people noting that when he is captured, that he's talking about it incessantly. Sometimes people noting that other enslaved people are talking about Nat's description of his visions. It is possible to imagine a conspiracy that generated enough people to get all those stories straight, but it seems much more logical that there's some confluence of an actual set of visions there that many people know about, and then a set of details we can say only come from Gray and that we have to treat a little bit more distinctly. We might also be suspicious of the ways that enslaved women disappear from the Confessions. And it's really hard to know how much of that is Gray creating that as a way of minimizing the broad base of the instability of slavery and the potential for broad-based rebellion, or how much Nat himself is steering away from them to protect a woman described in other sources as his wife, as well as other people. So there's all kinds of interesting puzzles and imperfections. And also, I do think by layering those sources as well as later sources of oral histories and what sometimes is described as folklore that spread among Black Virginians, we can see places of real resonance that echo through many of the sources where we might not have lawyerly certainty, but a real preponderance to believe that this is the most likely, that some of these things are quite likely to be true.
Well, Gregory Downs, Department Chair, Professor of History at UC Davis, co-author of the book Nat Turner, Black Prophet, A Visionary History. Thank you for joining us on Freedom Now, KPFK, Los Angeles.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight.
Pledge a mere $100 and receive as a thank you gift the latest book from Gerald Horne, hot off the presses, Armed Struggle, with a question mark, Panthers and Communists, Black Nationalists and Liberals in Southern California through the 60s and 70s. Read about the distinctions drawn between and amongst armed propaganda, armed self-defense, and armed struggle. Read the first detailed analysis of the shootout at the UCLA campus in January 1969, leaving 2 Panthers dead. Read the first detailed analysis of the LAPD attack on Panther headquarters in December 1969. Read the first detailed analysis of the August 1970 shootout at the Marin County Courthouse, featuring Pasadena teenager Jonathan Jackson in an alleged attempt to free his elder brother, George Jackson, and read of the role of the recently deceased political prisoner, Ruchell Magee. Read the first detailed analysis of the attempt at UCLA to fire Professor Angela Davis because of her membership in the U.S. Communist Party and her subsequent trial when she was charged with murder, conspiracy, and kidnapping during the aforementioned county courthouse shootout. Read the first detailed analysis of the Panthers' embassy abroad in Algeria, led by Eldridge Cleaver of Pasadena and Watts, and their attempt to build global solidarity for the Black liberation struggle. Read of the Panthers' solidarity delegations to the nation then known as the People's Republic of the Congo in Brazzaville, and of the Panthers' exile in socialist Cuba. Read of the connections between Hollywood communists and progressives, such as screenwriter Dalton Trumbo, actor Jane Fonda, actor Gene Seberg, screenwriter Donald Freed, basketball star Bill Walton, and producer Bert Schneider, and their support for the Panthers. Read of the severe repression visited upon radical and left-wing forces, which set the stage for the rise of paramilitary forces, often depicted as gangs, and the concomitant rise of the drug epidemic, especially crack cocaine. Read the first detailed analysis of the NAACP chapter in LA, especially the Beverly Hills Hollywood branch, which was a cash cow for the national organization, not least because of the contributions from celebrities like Sammy Davis Jr. Read of the roots of Kwanzaa, the nationally celebrated Black American holiday. Above all, understand why historically Southern California has been in the vanguard of radicalism and revolutionary upsurges, and how that spirit has yet to be squashed. Again, pledge a mere $100 and receive a signed copy of the latest book by Gerald Horne, Armed Struggle, with a question mark, Panthers and Communists, Black Nationalists and Liberals in Southern California through the 60s and 70s.
And you can pledge online at kpfk.org or call 818-985-KPFK. That's 818-985-5735. And you will receive this book as a thank you gift with your donation of $100 to the station. And in closing, we'd like to thank all those who donated this hour to support Freedom Now and KPFK Pacifica Radio. Thank you to our guest, Gregory Downs. Thank you to our producers, Dr. Gerald Horne, Brother Brennan, Sister Flora, Sister Femi, our board op Wendell, and all those who made today's program possible. Please stay tuned for our Sister Assumpta coming up next with Spotlight Africa, bringing you news from Mother Africa. Signing off for Freedom Now, this is Sister Thage, and until next week, as always, we stand ready for revolution.
We state these facts only to let you know that those of us who are revolutionary, Pan-Africanists, is not because we love revolution. It is historically determined, and we have no alternative but to follow history and to use history for the benefit of our people.
Power to the people.